Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
What's the scariest situation you've ever been in? Ghosts, cryptids, murderers, maniacs, serious screwed up moments that have stayed with you.
Had a rough patch phase when I was around 16. Nothing serious, just skipping school, shoplifting, some drugs. Parents didn't give a shit about me. Hell, my dad probably did more drugs than I ever will. Pretty much knew the police by their first names. Mom would always take his side and blame me for any household problems. Would leave for a few days without telling them on a regular basis. They wouldn't even notice. Used to go to my cousin's house. Problem is, they lived a town over. Would hitchhike on the highway there and back. Dumbass teenager, I know. Don't judge me. Get picked up by some guy in a truck one day. Looked normal, blue-collar guy in a trucker hat. We shoot the shit for a bit. Where am I going? Why am I doing this? It dangerous, etc. Silence for a bit, then he starts eyeing me up and down. Get this sense that something isn't right. He asks what I'm willing to do in return. Offer him some cash. He says that won't do. How's about you give me lil something for my troubles? How about no, you can drop me off here. He speeds up, goes on that I will do this, and then maybe he'll ask for more, and if I run I'll end up in a river or in the woods and nobody will ever know. Had some weapons on me like a baton and a knife, but I also stole my dad's Walther Point .380, which itself was probably illegal and used in drug deals, but I don't give a F. Pointed at him with a shaking hand. He says he was just kidding and to put it away. Nope, say keep driving. I have no idea what I'm doing. Tell him to keep driving. Buying myself some time and trying to think of what to do. Don't have the balls to shoot him. He keeps saying it was a joke to scare me. Tell him to pull off to the side at one of those trucker stops. Tuck the gun into my pocket. Tell him to walk into the woods. I still have no idea what I'm doing. Look and feel like I'm going to piss my pants. Get out of sight into the trees. He turns around and is like, okay, now what? Standing there shaking like a wet dog, can't even speak. My mouth is so dry. He chuckles and is like, okay then, and walks towards me reaching for my pocket. Don't even think. Kick him as hard as I can in the balls, wearing heavy work boots because it's fall. He drops and curls up, gasping for air and swearing that he's gonna cut my balls off. He starts to stand up. I kick him again and again. Kick him in the head, knock him out. I think I killed him. Oh shit, oh shit. Put my finger under his nose. He's still breathing but out cold. Look around, nobody saw me. Sprinkle some of my drugs on him, put it in his pockets too. Get back to the trucker spot, use a payphone and call the cops. Don't say my name or any info, just that there was a guy flashing people and he looked like he was high. He was also trying to coax people into the woods and looked dangerous. Walk all the way home, don't get back until the early morning. Never hitchhike again. Tell DR I was almost assaulted and murdered by a potential highway trucker, Chris Chan. The whole thing scared me straight though. Never did anything like it again. Stopped hanging around with the wrong people and got my shit in order after that.
Be 9 years old. Visit Grandma, whose house is right on Lake Erie. One night, Dad tells creepy bedtime story about the supposed Lake Erie snake monster. Bessie scares the shit out of my 9-year-old self. A few days later, my 20-year-old man-child uncle convinced me to go on a jet ski ride. I decline at first, but he calls me a wimp, so I give in. Water is completely mucky and clouded over that day. Can't see the bottom in even 5 inches of water. Be terrified the entire time, looking left and right for the lake monster. Uncle tells me about a reef, giant rock, way out in the lake that you can stand on. Asks me if I want to see it. I say yes. We found it after a while, several hundred yards from shore. He tells me to stand on it, so I get off the jet ski and step onto the rock. He drives off with me standing on it. Stand there and wait, terrified that I'll see the lake monster. Big bubble with a plopping sound comes up from beneath the rock. Nope, nope, nope. Stand and whimper like a coward. Uncle comes back 15 minutes later with a Diet Coke in his hand. What an asshole he was. I went back to that same spot on the lake last year on a clear day. And it's pretty cool though. Lots of fish and colorful rocks below. Would go again.
Something similar happened to me as a kid. Was 9 years old and lived in a kind of summer cottage house on Lake Erie, Canadian side, all year round. It was maybe early spring, so the water was cold, but bearable. I couldn't swim very well, so I didn't go as far as 10 meters away from the shoreline. That day my brothers told me they would teach me how to swim. We're super stoked, got into swim shorts and headed out to the beach. We went into the water and 2 older brothers, one was in grade 6, and the other was in grade 8 at the time. They grabbed me by my arms and helped me wade into the deeper water, start to freak out because I can't touch the bottom. I don't know how deep, but it felt like I was over an abyss. Brothers tell me not to worry, we'll be at the sandbar soon. Maybe 50 meters out in the water, and amazed at geography, and complexed at how sandbars exist. I was in grade 3, okay? We throw sand at each other and play games. Sun is starting to go down and they decide it's time to go home. I expected them to help me back to shore like they helped me out to the sandbar. Those assholes swam to shore and didn't bother looking back. I was out there for a half an hour and couldn't yell anymore. Doggy paddled over the abyssal trench like a gimp-armed hillbilly half-breed creature. Water was freezing by this point and couldn't see shit. Tried to keep my head up from drowning. Got home, sat in front of the fireplace, and Mom got home from work. Asked me what happened and why I was shaking, and explained the story. Brothers got beat with a broom. I got to stay home from school the next day because my mom thought I might have hypothermia. Haven't been swimming in open water since, pools are fine. But even the thought of falling off a boat or canoe scares the shit out of me.
This happened about a month ago. Be in Mexico. Just arrived by plane to Mexico City. It's around 11 p.m., traveling by bus between cities. Mexico City to Puebla, to be precise. Try to relax and get some sleep. Halfway there, traffic comes to a halt. Guess it must be some police security checkup or something. Suddenly realize there is absolutely no oncoming traffic on the left lanes. Very dark outside, very cold too. Wait for 1 hour, no traffic movement at all. Try to get to sleep, but feeling more and more uneasy, so I can't. Cop cars start coming from the oncoming lanes on the left, headed in the same direction we were going. WTF is happening, .png. Another hour goes by. There's no phone signal and I'm out of food and water. Still waiting as bus passengers start to lose their patience. About 50 fuzz cars pass us by. Getting more and more freaked out as no one knows what's going on. 5 hours after stopping, traffic starts moving again. Get to a hotel at 6 a.m. I never figured out what was the cause of it all. Maybe drug-related violence, maybe some kind of protest that was blocking traffic.
3 years ago, working in a local jewelry store, around closing, 8 p.m., 2 guys run in and start breaking showcases with metal pipes and starting to fill gym bags. They don't say anything, just breaking showcases. In total shock, just standing there. See my boss, the owner's son, pull out his pistol, deafening pops, maybe 6 to 10 rounds in rapid succession. One guy drops his gym bag and metal bar and runs out the door. Another guy is trying to crawl for the door, he's bleeding. Stops crawling, is struggling to breathe. A guy was pleading for me to call the ambulance. My boss is on the phone with 911. He bleeds to death before the ambulance or police get there. Quit the next day. The other guy is never caught. I'm not sure if he got shot too, have nightmares for a good part of a year.
Almost got kidnapped by a dude when I was a youngster. Outside playing with a neighbor girl, running around doing kid stuff. The house is situated right next to a fairly commonly used road. Enough people every day that you don't recognize most of the cars. We end up near the road and see a dead snake, run over. We both stand over it and look on curiously. White minivan approaches and pulls over next to us. The guy gets out and walks around. All I remember are his boots. My friend and I don't pay him much mind. He asks what we're looking at. Dead snake. Do you like snakes? I don't remember what I said. And then apparently the girl's mother saw us all through her kitchen window and came rushing out with her father following quickly behind. The dude just calmly walked back around and got in his van before driving off. Wasn't scary at the time, but in hindsight. No one ever spelled it out for me, but I put it together eventually. Never saw that neighbor girl again either.
I met a Mexican kid named Carlos, general piece of shit gang banger. Wanted in connection with a bunch of armed robberies, assaults, even some shootings. The guy you hear about killing a stranger because he was bored. I used to feel bad for him when we were younger, thought he was misunderstood. Nope. It became obvious he was just a thug and future psychopath. Fought him once, broke his nose, He said his gang was going to come after me and kill me. Shame, his family was actually very nice. No dad, but the mom was a sweet lady and the sister was terrified of him. Used to deal drugs out of their house. If the mother tried to stop it, he'd hit her. Cops get called for domestics all the time. One day I'm walking my dog by a river. It's around dusk. See two cars parked on the riverbank under the bridge. See Carlos, he's wearing a durag, big white t-shirt hanging down to his knees. The other guys aren't normal gangbangers. Dressed more adult in nice suits, but definitely looked like trouble. Ducked down by the brick wall to see this. Carlos is walking, moving, and talking thug. These guys are just staring at him stone-faced and looking irritated by him. 10 minutes of this, and Carlos goes back to his lowrider and gets a duffel bag. Hands it to them, they give him a different duffel bag in return. Oh, a drug deal, keeping it classy. One of the men in suits takes a cell phone out of his pocket and hands it to Carlos. Carlos jumps back even though I'm across the river and hear him yell, "Hey man, what the foo?" See a flash come out from the cell phone. See her shirt, like jump and shift, I guess. The point is he got shot in the chest. Wasn't a phone, it was a little pistol. Guys in suits shot him a few more times, then casually got their duffel bag back and put him in the trunk. His body is found a week later in the woods. Pretty sure I witnessed a mafia hit. Never told anyone and I never will.
I grew up in a small village in the countryside of northwest England. My mother and father split when I was around 3 years old. I stayed with my mom, but she was largely absent for most of my youth, and I was basically raised by my granddad, whom I lived with until he passed away. I had two best friends. The world was a safe place back then, and on weekends and during holidays, my two friends and I would play outside in the woods from early morning until after sunset. It was during the school summer holidays of 1987 that this incident took place. I was 8 years old at the time, and what I'm about to tell you is unbelievable and makes no sense to me even now, but I think the time has come to share it. On the morning that this happened, I went around to call for my two friends to see if they wanted to come out and play. There's an area of woodland at the top of the village where a huge old oak tree had been struck by lightning and partially fallen down. My friends and I had claimed this area as our own little playground, as the half of the tree that had fallen was really good for climbing and making tree houses and dens. We had christened it the base due to it being the place where we started the majority of our childhood adventures. It turned out that one of my friends wasn't feeling well, so he wasn't allowed to play, and the other had gone shopping with his mom. So that day, I headed out to the base alone to get to the fallen tree. I had to walk through a large field, which was periodically maintained, but at the time the grass hadn't been cut and was around 3 feet high. The fallen tree was part of a larger cluster of trees along the bottom edge of this field, and the lighter wood where the tree had split apart was visible through the overhanging branches of the surrounding trees from about halfway across the field. As I got to the middle of the field, I looked towards the base to see if I could see any other kids there, and I realized that I couldn't see the light of wood of the fallen tree. But in its place, all I could see was brown. My 8-year-old mind couldn't process this, and the best I could come up with was that the tree had somehow grown its bark back since I was last there just a few days before. I was intrigued. I took a few steps forward when an overwhelming sense of fear came over me and stopped me in my tracks. At this point, I couldn't see anything, but somehow I knew that something was very wrong and that something was near to the base. As I stared towards the base, I realized that there was something brown obscuring my view of the fallen tree, and then it had started to move. The thing that was standing there had its back to me, and the second I realized this, it slowly turned to face me. It was at that point that I knew I was in trouble. I realized that the brown I could see was hair, not fur, but hair about 4 inches long, and it was exactly the same color as the tree bark. I couldn't tell if the hair was different colors or uniformly brown with dead leaves and branches and such in it. But from a distance, it would have been invisible to anyone looking. I couldn't move my limbs, which felt like lead, and I could feel my heart beating in my ears. Every fiber of my being was telling me to run, but I was so scared. I was rooted to that spot. The thing squatted down similar to how a sumo wrestler does before a fight. I couldn't see its head or face as it was obscured by the overhanging branches, but I got a clear view of its chest, stomach, and arms. The hair on its chest and stomach was slightly shorter than the hair on its back and arms and a bit lighter in color. It was huge, easily 4 feet across the shoulders, and at least 8 feet tall in its squatting position. Keep in mind that as an 8-year-old, I had never seen or heard of anything like this before. To me, this thing was a monster, plain and simple. Its shoulders and biceps were absolutely massive, and my only point of reference was that this thing was like the Incredible Hulk, but with hair. I was about 30 feet or so from it, and I was so scared that I didn't even realize I'd started to cry. If this wasn't unbelievable enough, it brought its hands together in front of its chest, making a circle shape with its thumbs and fingers. In the middle of the circle appeared a ball of pure white light, which I now know to be an orb, but at that time I likened it to a floating crystal ball. The being stood up and dropped its arms down. As it did so, its hands were close to being level with its knees, and the orb stayed in the same position where it had appeared and rose with the creature. When it stood, there was no sound. As this happened, there were no birds singing, no grasshoppers chirping, and even though I could feel the breeze and see the grass and the leaves on the branches moving, there was just deafening silence. I don't know how long this all took, but I realized I'd been holding my breath as all this happened. I exhaled hard, and as I did so, a crystal-clear thought flashed through my mind. If you don't run now, you'll never see home again. I don't know how to explain where this thought came from, but I know for a fact it wasn't mine. At that moment, I felt a familiar nuzzling in my armpit and realized that Hobo, my granddad's Irish wolfhound, was behind me. I don't know how it got out, but I didn't realize he had followed me. He put his head beside my left shoulder and began growling and snarling, and this somehow snapped me out of the trance I was in. I turned and sprinted as fast as I could back through the field. Hobo ran beside me all the way home. When I got back home, it took my granddad about an hour or so to calm me down, and I explained to him what had happened. He responded by giving me the worst beating he had ever given me in my life and sending me to my room. He then left the house, telling me not to move. He didn't return for about half an hour. When he did return, he came into my room and he sat on my bed. He hugged me and comforted me while I began to cry again. I was scared and confused. He told me that I had seen the Woodwose and that I had to stay indoors for the rest of the summer, that I was forbidden from ever playing at that base again. Needless to say, I never went back there. Before this happened, I was a happy, outgoing kid. But this experience made me withdrawn and timid. I asked my granddad what the Woodwose was, and he told me that it was the tall, hairy man who guards the woods. He said that he scares grown-ups away and sometimes takes kids to a place in the woods where they're never ever seen again. At the time, I had no reason to doubt my granddad. He had raised me and was the only father figure I had when growing up. I think he beat me because he was scared and angry at what had happened to me and took these feelings out on me. I never thought any less of him for that. I didn't even hear the term Bigfoot until years later in high school when I found a book on unexplained mysteries and cryptids. I have since learned the stories of the Woodwose go back to the 15th century, and it is referred to as the hairy man, the wild man of the woods, the faun, and sometimes the green man. I don't know if it is a Bigfoot-type being or if it's related to these adjectives, but I know for a fact that there are things on this planet and in the woods and dark places that are beyond most people's understanding. I believe that my granddad also had some kind of encounter with one of those beings, although he never admitted it until the day he died. Anyway, that's my experience. I am 41 years old and still researching and looking for answers. I still believe that if it wasn't for my granddad's dog, that thing would have taken me. I still live in the Cheshire County countryside in northwest England, and the woods around where I live now are the playground of my kids and their friends. I don't want them to be scared of the woods, but I do encourage them to be sensible.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Live in Arkansas. Uncle owns a farm, but my dad splits the profits and helps pays for some of it. Whatever, me and my cousins have literally acres of land to play on. Spend days out driving golf cars, shooting, going hiking, or just sitting out under the stars. Driving out there one day, older cousin Jeff is talking to my uncle who says something happened on one of the trails. Uncle asks me if I want to see something screwed up. Of course I do. Tells Jeff to take me up on a golf cart to the trails and bring a rifle just in case. Go just off their property into the tree line, find a lamb skinned and disemboweled tied to a tree. Crudely drawn pentagrams in the dirt with its blood. Almost puke, Jeff laughs and we drive around for a bit. Says they've had a few lambs and a sheep going missing and finding it all cut up like that. Says they all have guns on them when checking the property. One is loaded with beanbags if it's just some punk kids trying to act hardcore. The other has bullets just in case. Never find out who did it, but my uncle swears on his life he shot at some people in the woods one night, and then it stopped.
Go to a party, meet this cute girl, immediately flirt my ass off. She doesn't run away, actually sticks to my side all night, literally have to sneak away from her to go to the bathroom. Start making out. She whispers that I'm going upstairs with her now. Well, okay then. She reaches into her purse and pulls out some rope. Says if I'm not into kink, I'm experimenting tonight. Ties my wrists down to the bed, then just sits on my lap and does nothing. Why the hell are you stopping? Looks at me with this cute, awkward smile like she's trying to find the right words. Asks me how I feel about having kids. Nope. Tell her I have to go. Now. She holds me down and runs her fingers through my hair, telling me, shh, I'm not serious, but I'm sure you'd be a great dad. Starts working on me. I start loudly telling her to stop. She takes off one of her socks and ties it around my mouth. 30 minutes later, she's done, says she'll call me with the results and unties me. Run away, drive home and hide. Never gave her my phone number. Never hear from her. I may have a love child out there.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup,